So now we're going to do the afterburn. So if you got comments or questions about the teaching today, please have lots of them so the Rebbeson doesn't feel like I went short. Well, we got them over here first, and we'll come to you, okay? And then on live stream, Rob will be taking note of that. Please keep it to the things that were said today as best we can, and we'll begin with Stephanie.
Okay. I hope I can articulate this well enough, but...
Right up close to the mouth.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sorry. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. I'm sorry. Something that you were talking about at the end just made me think, because you're saying that you feel like when you're talking to us that you're trying to, or that, see, I knew I would have a hard time articulating this. What I'm trying to say is that it seems as if this is a time when you stand in the place of the Father. Like if we would recognize that you are speaking to us in a way that the Father has ordained a way, set up a way that you are in that place that we are hearing from him. When you say, I know you feel that way, but you know, why is it getting in the way of you making your decision? Because when I look at this, verse 17 says, therefore, come out from among them and separate. He doesn't sit there and say, I know it feels really bad. And, the Father's not going to speak to us and say, I know it feels really bad, so why don't you sit there for a while and sit in your stuff and be all uncomfortable and be in a bad place. He says, come out. He's not looking at, even the Father. That's why I say you're speaking as the Father would usually speak to us, and you're mirroring what the Father is trying to tell us when you're saying those things to us in council or in other venues. You're speaking as the Father would have spoken to us. Because it was like I was looking back. I even went back to the original, because I think that was from Isaiah, if I'm not mistaken, Isaiah 52 is where that came from. And I was trying to look at it, and that was where Isaiah was basically doing, coming into them and saying, please see it and come out and quit this and knock it off and that kind of thing.
Same thing was happening then.
Yeah.
Same thing's happening now. So Isaiah was dealing with it.
Yep.
Paul's dealing with it. And that's a lot of time after Isaiah. And now we're still dealing with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if we had all recognized that the problem in that equation is not that you're speaking for the Father, but that we can't seem to see that we need to get out of our muck. It's not about what you're saying, it's about what we're holding on to. If we could all look at that, we might come into a place where the Father's saying, well done, good and faithful servant.
Amen. Appreciate that. So let me just I'm going to use an example of what she's talking about, which is I'm going to take what she said and kind of just rephrase it for clarification. That's really what the anointed teacher is supposed to be doing. Taking what Yahweh said, bringing it to current understanding of what you're dealing with, and put it in the terms and the language we speak today. Okay? Because we have phrases here, like it says, do not touch what is unclean. And I was like, well, look, don't interact with that which you shouldn't interact with. So I've rephrased it, but I think it still has the integrity of what he was saying. And that's what she's saying, is that when you allow the Father to speak through you, which she's saying that she's hearing him through what I'm saying, it's not that I stand in the role or the place of the Father, but I'm being used as a way to communicate what the Father is saying by using multiple examples of what that would look like today while maintaining the integrity of what he said. Problem is, you've all been at churches where they gave you multiple examples and they totally did not maintain the integrity of what he said. They did the opposite. They came up with all kinds of examples that are all disconnected from what he actually said. And so you want to make sure when you're listening to somebody, me included, is it maintaining the integrity of what was actually said, but bringing it only for clarification into today in our lives, okay? And so that's good. I appreciate that, Stephanie. Who's next? Where'd the mic end up? Okay, over on this side, Michelle.
I just wanted to ask for a clarification. It's like a 4-point question. Like when you're talking about come out, are you referring to Revelation 18:4, or what was the reference?
Well,
and my question was this. When he said, my people come out of her, is that a reference to the church or like the gym that I'm going to or a marriage that I'm in to someone who's a non-believer? I mean, that's a pretty broad statement, because when I'm at the gym, I share the real name of the Messiah with everyone. I do. And if I'm around people in my neighborhood that have rejected the real name of the Messiah and are pagans, I totally disassociate with them. Or if you're at work, you saying that you can't take that job anymore because you're surrounded by a bunch of atheists?
No. Okay.
Or and the 4-point question is also my girlfriend Susan, who is having a really difficult time coming out of the churches. Which is that what Elohim is saying? Come out of her, which is like the church, or all pagan customs and things that would pollute, your faith, and I wouldn't want to touch that.
Okay.
If someone came into my life and said, I still want to celebrate the Christmas tree, I would definitely not want to touch that.
Right. Okay. Good question in terms of the fullness of, I think, what you're trying to ask. Okay, the question being, what does it look like, or what does it mean to come out of her, my people? Okay, so I guess I should look this way on this camera. So the thing is this. It's not saying you shouldn't go to your job. It's not saying you can't go to the gym, you can't go to the supermarket or any of those type of things. It says, come out from among them from the influence type of level. In other words, you're not hanging out with. You're not going and spending your time with in a social way, where that's where influence comes about. Not just the fact that you're sitting at the job doing your job, or that's going to the store and doing the store, or going to the gym and working out, but the socialization aspect. Where are you spending the time? Because that's where we tend to influence each other, when we spend time with each other in a more social way. Okay, so that's part one. Part two, okay, and I know that this is going to be tough, but because you keep bringing it up in public, I kind of have to address it in public. I think we need to talk a little bit about there's a sense, and a lot of you maybe have the same problem, a sense of needing to influence others by, I keep sharing the name with them. Look, they can say Jesus for as long as they want to say that, because until he reveals, it doesn't matter what you reveal. So getting them to start calling him Yeshua doesn't fix anything. There are a lot of Christians out there that now say Yeshua, a lot of Christians that have that in their songs and everything else, and they say Yahweh and nothing. That doesn't change the fact that they are not under the reputation and influence of the authority of the name. So the name is not that important from the fact that we pronounce it right. It's important for all of the other reasons. It's respectful to pronounce it as best you can, because after all, if someone called me Bob or Fred and my name is Steve, that might bother me a little bit. My name isn't Bob or Fred. Not against anybody named Bob or Fred. If you're Bob or Fred, you wouldn't want to be called Steve or Mike or whatever. You have your name, right? So it's respectful to call somebody by their name. However, what's more important is that at some point he might reveal himself to them, but you don't have the responsibility of revealing him to them, okay? So you can kind of take a deep breath, because that's a Christianized idea, that somehow we have the responsibility to do that. Now take it the next step further. It's not our responsibility to bring them out of her, my people, or drag them out of her, my people. He says, my people, the ones I've called, the ones whose eyes I've opened, you need to not be doing those things. You need to come out, my people. Now, that doesn't mean they're not eventually going to be his people too, but the ones that only come into the category of my people, as we've been teaching for 44 parts, are those that are covenanted. The covenanted are covenanted with what? If you do what I say, I will call you, my people. Okay, that's actually the covenant. So he says, those of you that are covenanted, come out. Don't be among them in that social way where you can get influenced. It's a relational thing. Don't be married to them, unequally yoked in that way. Don't be best friends with them. It's a social, relational thing. Not I'm a coworker with you, or I happen to be standing in line with you at the store, or I happen to be working in the gym at the next machine next to you. But it's the social aspect where you start really sharing and influencing each other. When you spend your time in that social, relational thing where you're talking about what you prefer and what you like, and you talk about politics or health or religion and whatever comes up, and you tend to try to influence each other, because after all, we're always most comfortable if the person I'm talking to is like me, right? That's the way you always feel. If the person you're talking to is like you, you're happier. So if you're talking about politics, it's about that. If you're talking about health, it's about that. If you're talking about music, it's about that. Whatever it is, you're always trying to influence the person to be like you. Okay? If the person likes rock and roll and you like country, you're going to have a little debate going back and forth trying to influence the other person. If you're a Democrat, you're trying to do the Republicans and vice versa. I mean, it's about, you're more comfortable if the person is like you. Okay, you're both Democrats, great. You're both Republicans, great. You both like country music, great. You both like rock and roll, great. You both like, okay, right? Then it's different. Okay? But when you don't, then somebody's going to tend to, if not both, you try to influence. And so don't put yourself in positions like that with people who may try to influence you, not about something as benign as music or whatever, or politics and stuff, but about your belief in your Creator and how you walk this out. All right? As long as that's not the issue, then don't worry about the relationship you're in. You want to be careful of the ones that has to do with yoking. Okay? Don't be involved in somewhere where you might be having instruction, guidance, or influence about your walk with your Creator coming from somebody else. Okay? I have friends, I don't actually interact with them very much anymore. I mean, I do this so much and full time, I don't have time for any of that other thing. But I have friends who I've known my whole life that I would probably have never had and never would have a conversation about the walk. They would do their thing and I'm doing my thing, and it would just never come up. There would never be an effort to influence from that point of view. And when I say that, they're also non-religious, so that I wouldn't be tempted looking at them, oh, so that's how they worship their gods. Maybe I would want to do that. But what could happen is I go, well, they're not doing anything, and that looks appealing. They seem to have total freedom, so that could be appealing. So you have to be careful of how influence can be and how subtle it can be. So even if there's no conversation about this walk, you're still, well, what if they seem to be making more money and having a happier life, and they seem to, keyword, seem to be better off than you are? You may think, well, if I do what they do, I'll have what they have. That's what the secular, motivational speaking, personal development people say. If you do what others do, you'll have what they have. So if you're doing what broke people do, you'll be broke. What rich people do, you'll be rich. Healthy people do, you'll be healthy, right? Unhealthy people you'll be if you do what people do, you should get the same results. Well, that doesn't work on the spiritual level, and not just on the secular level. It might work. On the spiritual level, you misconnect the secular to the spiritual. So you might think, oh, it's because of their belief system vertically that they have all these things. No, it's because of some of the mechanical things they did. They eat different than you, so they have a different health maybe. Or they've done different things work-wise and career-wise, so they have a different financial status than you do. But their vertical thing is a separate thing. You could be as rich as the richest person on this planet or as poor as the poorest person and still have the same vertical thing just right or just wrong. Does that make sense? So one is not evidence of the other. You can't look at somebody and go, well, because of their financial status or their health status, they must have their walk right. Well, they may have their secular walk in that area better than you do, but doesn't mean they actually have their vertical walk correct. Don't misconnect those things. Okay? So it's a good question, because really new people especially, and I'm not picking on you because it's good we get new people, have a struggle sometimes with how much is my responsibility to try to influence and share what I know with other people, because I know how important it was to me. Certainly they should realize how important it is to them, but if they're not having their eyes open, they can't receive it anyway. Okay? So I know it's hard because we have that affection thing again. We have a heart. We really do love the people. You hear Michelle say this like every week. My friend so-and-so and my friend, she loves them dearly and wants them to have what she has. Okay, that's her heart. The sad part and unfortunate part, you're going to have to realize and recognize there's only so much influence you can have until he does it, which is almost none. Until he opens their eyes and disturbs their peace, they're not going to want to leave where they're at. Does that make sense? Okay? So good question. I appreciate that, because that's important that we don't get confused, and maybe I don't get to say it often enough, so every now and then someone hopefully asks a question like that, to recognize that you don't have a responsibility to do anything but walk this out as the example so that people watching you can see what it looks like to walk this out right. And then if they're drawn to you, where they come and ask you a question about, hey, I noticed that you asked about that pork thing at the restaurant. Why'd you do that? Or I noticed that, there was a wedding the other day that we were both invited to, but you didn't come. Or I noticed that, sundown was getting a little early and you left work early on Friday, whatever it was, and, maybe they didn't even say the word Sunday. I just noticed you left early Friday. What's going on? I mean, they may notice something and ask a question. Now, that doesn't mean that they're being called and their eyes are open, but it gives you a chance to kind of plant a seed and say, well, that's because of the belief system I have and the relationship I believe that I have with my Creator, and that I'm trying to walk this out a certain way. And then maybe one day they'll remember you said that. And then if he does open their eyes, they might go back and go, who was that person I was talking to that seemed to know a little about this? And they might come and seek you out, as opposed to you seeking them out. Okay? So just plant those little seeds. But that doesn't mean run around actively trying to plant seeds. If they come and ask for a seed, where they say, hey, what's those things hanging from your clothes? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's, they might not really be interested. They may just be curiosity, but at least you tell them. You planted a seed. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people at Nate's hospital where he works that if they ever have the eyes open, they know who to go talk to because they know why he does or doesn't do certain things, and he has a seat on and everything else. But only if they ask, And so he's just there doing what he does. All right, so where's the mic? Okay, over there? Okay, Rabbi Tom. Oh, we got 2 mics now. Okay. Confused me. Nate's holding one over here, but there's one there.
All right, thank you. Thanks for another dynamite teaching. I was hit by a few shock waves, and one of them is here in 2 Corinthians 7:1. It says, having then these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all defilement of the flesh and spirit, perfecting set-apartness in the fear of Elohim. I noticed a cross-reference footnote, A, and I looked what A was, and it's a cross-reference to Bereshith, or Genesis 12:1. And that is where Yahweh said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house to a land which I show you. And what hit me was that our relatives, family members, near and far related, or our friends or acquaintances, can cause us very easily to become defiled. And we have to sometimes just sever ties. That doesn't mean we have to shun them or, get divorced or anything like that. But cut down on the socialization, because almost always they have the wrong influence on us, and they have ways of putting pressure on us to do things that are contrary to Torah. And I've learned this in my own family. I have some family members that, well, I love them. I'm just glad that I'm far away from them.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, let me just clarify something Rabbi Tom said again. He used a phrase that I think we could all use, but I'm going to correct him, hopefully. Okay, he said, we all have a situation where our relatives can cause. Relatives can't cause anything. You can choose to allow them to influence. Because people don't start to scapegoat the relatives. The thing is, if you are among them, you can allow yourself to be affected by it. Now, they may try, but even if they try, you still have to allow. Don't say, well, it's because my relatives. No, it's because you allowed your relatives to influence you. Now, the thing is, you can avoid that to a certain degree, as Rabbi Tom said, by not putting yourself in a position to give them the opportunity to be influential. Okay? But they don't cause you to do anything. You still have to choose to allow. They may try. They're going to guilt you, leverage you, threaten you, manipulate you, but you still have to choose to allow it or it doesn't work. Okay? So be careful with that, all right? Now, it's not picking on Rabbi Tom at all. It's a phrase that all of us could easily find ourselves using. Well, my relatives, they can cause you to do that. Well, the relatives can't cause you to do anything. They can try, but you have to allow it. So let's be careful with that. There was a part of verse 1 in chapter 7 that I didn't hit on, so you get this as part of the afterburn, and that is, in the fear of Elohim. Stop being afraid of mom, dad, brother, sister, children, and everything else. You're supposed to be doing this set-apartness, perfecting it in the fear of Elohim. Stop being afraid of everything else. Listen to the fear of Yahweh teaching. Mm-hmm. If you haven't heard it in a while, if you haven't listened to it, go re-listen to it. You've got to remember the idea of the fear of Elohim. Stop being afraid of, because that's what happens is you're afraid that so-and-so won't talk to you anymore, or so-and-so will disown you, or so-and-so will tell everybody else in the family what a piece of whatever they think you are. I'm just being blunt. But you're afraid of that. Don't be afraid of it. Know that it's going to happen and do it anyway. Why? Because you're more afraid of Yahweh than them. Why are you afraid of them? Well, they're going to say I'm all in a cult and this and that. Well, they're probably going to do that anyway, so what? They're in a cult and they don't even know it. Okay? World's biggest cult. And they don't know it. Because everybody only wants to point a finger at whatever you're not in, that's the cult. What you're in can't possibly be the cult. So they point the finger at everything that's different. If it's different, it's a cult. We don't, anyway, that's too much to go into. Okay, but just remember you're doing this in the fear of Elohim. Okay, where's the mic now? On this side. Okay, Tamara?
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I have two things. One, since you were discussing about what we should and should not share, I wanted to share with you guys something that I did that was terribly wrong about 5 years ago. Before we became members of M2Y, we were with another group in Florida, and they were a little more aggressive and a little more outspoken about, what we should be sharing or not sharing. And my brother, who I have always been so close to, had gotten really involved in his church, and he was becoming like a leader, like a deacon. And I was so overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, he's got to know the truth, that I began to just spew everything right there in my kitchen and just tell him, even though my loving husband tried to encourage me to hush, I didn't listen. I usurped him, and my desire was that this is someone that I love so much, he's got to know. So I began to tell him all these things. Well, within about 2 to 3 months, my brother stopped his walk. He left his church. He left his family. And it's still a big, drawn-out thing. And I really have to swallow that and know that I probably helped cause that heartache on him and his family because of my big mouth and how I just felt the desire to just change him and persuade him to see the light. And it was not my place, and I was totally overstepping my bounds, and it's caused a lot of heartache in this family because of that.
Okay, well, let me help you with that. First of all, you caused nothing. What you did was you provided influence that he could choose to be influenced by. So I'm not saying you didn't do something, okay? But let's stop with the causality thing, all right? You provided influence. You did try to influence.
Yes, sir, I did.
And then he chose to embrace it in a certain way that led him in a certain direction. But he could have ignored you. He could have marginalized it. He could have done a lot of different things. So own the fact that you did have a part in putting out influence that he chose to go into. But the causality, you didn't cause, okay? I know it sounds subtle. Okay, I'll give you an example from my own life because this, I have to redo the teaching. But a lot of you know about my journey and how my journey took me pretty much out into nothing, and then I came back, etc. Well, when I went on the journey out, I had a certain level of influence with people that were listening to my teaching at the time. And I was accused, and I'm still accused, of causing people to do this, that, or the other thing, reject Messiah or leave this or with it. I caused nobody to do anything. They need to own their choices. I don't want to sound harsh or cold. I own that I provided a strong level of influence because of how they saw me. So I was influential, but that only is to the level. You know what? Some of you out here, I have a lot of influence you. Some of you, I have almost no influence you. That's your choice on that. It has nothing to do with me. I put this out there, and you either give me that level of influence or not. I own, though, that I am putting stuff out there that I'm hoping would be influential, because I think it would be to your good, right? So I did have stuff that I was doing, and the influence was out there, but you must own your choices. Your brother must own, he chose. You didn't cause anything. However, in your attempt to do what you did, you provided influence that he could choose to take in a direction. Does that make any sense? So there is something to own, okay? But don't own that you caused. People still have to make their own choices. As long as the person could have chosen differently, you didn't cause it, all right? Now, if you gave them no choice, then you can say, okay, I caused that. They had no choice, and I forced them to do something. But as long as they have choice, you influenced, but you didn't cause. I know that may sound subtle. I'm not trying to get you off the hook. You need to own what you did. You need to not do that to anybody else. But don't think you caused. There's lots of different choices he could have made, okay? He owns his choices. He needs to own his choices. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense to everyone. Because some of you are holding on to a whole lot of guilt you need to just let go of. Own the thing you did, but own it only to the limit that you need to own. Oh, but I did this, and I said that, and I did this, and then that person did that. They still chose and could have chosen something different. As long as they could have chosen something different, you didn't cause it. Oh yeah, you may have had a lot of influence over it, and you may have been, because they had a relationship with you where you had a lot of influence, and you should have recognized that, and maybe you didn't take that into account strongly enough, okay? But cause is a different word, okay? Anybody that's listening to me now, whatever you choose to do, that's I caused you to do nothing. That's on you. Am I trying to influence you? Absolutely. I'm trying to be a spokesperson for him so he can influence you. But what you do with it is yours. Well, the rabbi, he was harsh to me, whatever, so he caused me to leave. You chose. Own your choices. Own your choices. If you have freedom to go one way or the other way, then own it. Are we clear? Okay, that's a very important separate thing. So should you feel, emotional about some of the things that, hey, I really have influenced some people? Some of you raised your children really strong in Christianity. You influenced them strongly. You didn't cause anything, but they went along the way. You raised up a child the way they should go, and they're still going. Problem is, it's not the way they should go. And now they don't want to listen to you because you raised them up so well in the other way. But they still have to own their choices. Some of you have children that you tried very hard to raise them up that way, and the children still went off in a different direction. They made different choices. Some of you have children that no matter what influence you tried, they still went whatever way they wanted, no matter what you did, because they always had the freedom to choose. Yahweh gives us the freedom to choose. Okay, you need to just own that. Okay, Tamara, did that make sense? Did that help?
Yes, sir, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I feel so much better. Okay, so my original thought was to share. This morning when I was praying, Abba, please help me not to take for granted what we have, what we're able to do, the fact that we have transportation, the fact that we have a place to go. It may take us 2.5 hours to get here, and that's okay, but help me to always be grateful for what we have in this family. But I'm also so grateful for you and your counseling. And today it really sparked this thought in me. In 2 Corinthians 6 and 15, the latter part of that, it says, or what part does a believer have with an unbeliever? And one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you, Rabbi, is your counseling. And in previous years, I, as a blue, struggled emotionally, unable to communicate with a red. And, that caused so much problems in my heart and my head. And I wasn't able to sort it all out. And I sought counselors outside of the faith and outside of, how we believe and the structure. And I was influenced by things that were said, and I allowed some of that to really take root and be a part of me until I started counseling with you, and you have helped me so much to weed through that. And I'm not sure, and I guess the reason I wanted to speak up was also not only to thank you, but to allow people to understand that if you're getting counseling from someone outside of this faith, it might not be a good thing, because there is so much that was said. My husband and I will be celebrating 22 years in October, but we wouldn't have gotten to the 10th year if I had listened to some things that were said to me in the past, because that vertical alignment, that relationship, when they're not the outside influence, the outside counseling, we're not under the covenant, to realize what Yahweh has intended for us and how we really need to work together to love each other. And it says it over and over. I could have really been taken off of this course, and I'm just so grateful that Abba has provided, counseling through you to help me. Excuse me, sorry, Bailey. To help me be a better person and to be a better wife and a better mother.
Amen. Appreciate that. Okay. Sometimes it's a matter of, you can read a verse, and we did. We only read, 19 verses here. But having somebody that can find the part of the verse that applies to you and help you draw out the fullness of how it applies to you, and not just read the simplicity of the verse and miss all of the different ways that verse can be applied in your situation. Okay? And so having somebody that's given that talent or gift, and that's what they're there to do, But if you don't take advantage of the opportunity of it being available to you, you would never know, okay? And so that's really important. We've got some people here that were actually almost not going to be here, but after council came to understand that there might be things they hadn't seen, and then they could stay because they wanted to stay. Had nothing to do with the ministries type of stuff, it just had to do with secular struggles with the world and just trying to make ends meet or whatever. But if you come and get the counsel, you may get what you need to, that little piece, a little nuance that makes all the difference, and then things start to head in the right direction. Okay? All right, so who's next? Okay, Shira.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I just, in spite of fighting a little bit of a headache, I was so tempted to go Pentecostal on you. Amen, amen, amen. Come on, I know some of you guys felt that way too.
Come on now, preach it.
Preach it, that's what I want to say. Preach it, Rabbi. But, I just so appreciate you're taking us into the details. And I have 3 things that I want to bring up. First of all, just verse 18 just blows me away, because 17 and 18, if you come out, you don't touch the unclean thing, I'm going to receive you, and you're going to end up as sons and daughters of the Most High Elohim. And I just wanted you to know, all of a sudden in my head triggered some of your teachings on the millennium and the kingdom. The amazing, not just the fear of Elohim in terms of disappointing him, but the reward. I don't want to miss the reward, because I remember how you were talking about we're actually destined and created, if we pass the tests, to be of the actual species of Elohim, to actually be Amen. Sons and daughters, not just right now. Of course, we are family, we're sons and daughters, but to actually be manifested truly as Elohim beings and be able to rule and reign with him. And that is so, to me, when I think of a fear of Elohim, it's not just fear of displeasing the one I love the most, but it's the fear of missing what he has for me. So,
Amen.
Appreciate it. So that's awesome. Okay, the second thing I thought of was the example of Lot in Genesis. Lot, it says that righteous man living in Sodom, he was vexed constantly by the degradation around him. But he didn't start out that way. He had faith. He had emunah. He went with his uncle Abraham to where he knew not where, and they were really tight. And then their flocks and herds got too big, and Lot didn't go the direction he went because, I want to just go hang out in Sodom. He just saw it's beautiful land, it's wonderful, and so it's near Sodom, but who cares? He wasn't intending, but he let down his guard and ended up in this horrible place where he had to be dragged out by the angels and had a very tragic end of his life. So, it just made me think of him and how you were talking about the subtlety. I think Lot really succumbed to the subtlety. And
his wife, of course, had the problem of not really wanting to let it go. She's looking back, and it's the affections that had her looking back. I don't think she looked back because she wanted to see the fireworks. Okay, I mean, there was something still drawing her to that. Okay? So the third thing?
Okay, the third thing is the question about, you have mentioned specifically many of the things that we deal with in terms of who we choose to be influenced by. And often you have mentioned many, many times the preachers that are out there on the internet or on television, whatever, and how we have to be so careful. But I would like to pose to you, one of my biggest struggles isn't listening to preachers per se. It's if I want to sit down with a movie or, our entertainment, the things, it's so tainted. I bought a DVD. It was a really good war movie, and I wanted to look at it. But in order to see the war movie, it wouldn't let me fast forward. I had to sit through and go through previews of stuff that was just junk, And so I just threw the whole thing in the wastebasket. I'm sorry, but I just said, forget it. I just get, or I'm in the middle of a movie and it's about some animal and it's really good morals and they're going to rescue this animal, and then the hero and the heroine end up in bed together without benefit of marriage. And it's so tempting to want to say, well, I just want to see what happens to Fido, But, I really want to, this is such a, I'm blue, I want to see this little animal is going to get rescued. But I have to turn it off because I found that as I walk this walk, the coming out gets finer and finer tuned.
Right.
So would you like to comment on some of the other stuff going on in the media, what we should do about that?
Look, I think that the general parameters that I laid out is enough for right now because everybody's in a different place. And you can counsel about it, but the main point is this. Have a heightened awareness of what's influencing you. Okay? And even the idea that something might be influencing you that you're not even aware just have an awareness by asking the question. I wonder, think of the inputs. Look, whatever you read, whatever you watch, whatever you listen to, and who you hang out with, always ask the question, I wonder if there's a degree of influence coming from that I didn't think about that's subtly there. Not the obvious stuff, because there's stuff that you do on purpose knowing it's influencing you. You digest and put in your body by inputting these things, knowing that it's, okay? So like when I go to get the ice cream and eat it, I know, hey, it's not the best thing for me, but I know that when I do it and I'm taking it in anyway. So I'm aware of the influence. That doesn't mean that you should go take something in that's not good for you and do it anyway, but at least some things you're aware of. But there's also the subtleties. So now have a heightened awareness so that you're now going, okay, now I know that I shouldn't be eating the ice cream, so why don't I just stop eating that? Okay, so that's step one. But also, what about the other things that you're doing that you may not have been aware of? What about the people that, and you might even ask people around you, do you see that I'm being influenced by, because I'm telling you, people are being influenced by the people they hang out with and by the stuff they're watching. Look, I've had people say to me, Rabbi, I've really been enjoying all this stuff, but I want to go deeper. It's one of my favorite questions. How do I go deeper? And then they'll find something like a Jewish yeshiva university, something like that, something online. And the next thing you know, within 6 months to a year, they've gone completely into Judaism and quit. I've seen that many times. Okay? That's not to say that other people can't do the same exact thing and not end up there. But are you aware of the possibilities and the level of influence that you're going to get from immersing yourself into something? When you immerse yourself into, and it could be a hobby, it could be music, it could be movies, it could be books, it could be whatever your, DVDs, YouTube stuff. Many of you have teenagers who are absolutely influenced by YouTube. Okay, they are absolutely being influenced by what they're watching, and they can watch almost anything. They can watch any kind of ideology, any kind of theology, or any kind of anything. I mean, they're going to be influenced about the way they see the world, the way they understand everything. And they, of course, don't think that's happening at all. But it's the inputs. How much time they spend listening to a blogger or vlogger or some person is going to, at points, influence them. Can't help it. You are, this is a fact, the sum total of the inputs. Okay? And it's not the inputs like just from yesterday change you today. I mean, it's the consistent inputting of whatever it is over time gets the result of the changes. And so, children, you need to recognize that as well. Are you being aware, or do you have a heightened awareness of the inputs you're putting in? Oh, they seem nice enough and benign enough and blah, 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 but are they? They are not necessarily. So just recognize all that. So my answer to you is I wouldn't give specifics. It's with each person, it really depends on where they are and what they're doing. And not everybody is, look, I'll give you the example. This may seem weird. I remember there's sometimes things that sit in your mind. I was watching, for those of you that are old enough, I was watching Carson, okay, before Letterman, before all these other things, okay, and George Burns was on. And he'd love to have George on because he liked to ask him things like, George was probably 90 at the time, with his cigar and the whole thing. And he would ask questions like, so George, how's that doctor doing that told you that, you needed to quit smoking? He'd go, oh, he's dead. And George likes to have a drink. He goes, what about that doctor who told you to stop drinking? Oh, he's dead. Now, George lived to almost be 100 smoking and drinking. That doesn't mean that smoking and drinking doesn't have an adverse effect on you, but on him, it didn't have that effect. Okay? So not everybody is influenced as highly as everybody else by each thing. So certain things that might be really affecting you may not really affect you, whoever I'm pointing at, just generally, okay? And so it has to kind of be more case by case because some of you can handle certain things without it having any influence on you and not a problem at all, and others, forget it. Okay? And so that's kind of what we're talking about. Some of you could have, just a sip. I know somebody could have like just a little thimble that's a NyQuil and it'll knock them out for like 3 days. Others of you can have 2 or 3 beers and you function as if nobody would even know you had 2 or 3 beers. Everybody's different, okay? And so you have to know yourself and have that awareness of self and get counsel about you. So I can't really give more specifics than that. But start with a heightened awareness. Be aware that everything that you're taking in is influencing you, either a tiny little bit or a lot, and try to figure out where that is, okay? Okay, it also has to do with volume, by the way. If you're doing something very rarely, it probably doesn't have a lot of influence. You do it a lot, probably has a lot more influence, or at least potential influence. Okay, anybody else? Live stream?
Okay, from Janet Hoffman, 2 Corinthians 6:16 and John 14:17, 18. Can we ever lose the spirit of Elohim within us? I know it says we can grieve the spirit, but can it actually depart from us?
No, I mean, look, I only react that way because there's still so much Christianity in all of you. And this is stuff that you worry about because Christianity has made you worry about it. Okay? And you gotta just stop allowing that to happen. Do what you're supposed to do, and it will be fine. Okay, get back to Deuteronomy 8:2. Demonstrate that it's in your heart to do what you're supposed to do, and when you don't, repent of it, and it'll be fine. Stop worrying about, everybody saw, the insecure among you are always afraid you're going to do that one thing, and then you're screwed. Yes or no? Okay? Stop it. Okay? He loves you. He's infinitely patient, abundant in mercy and compassion. And stop worrying about these things. You can reject. He's not rejecting you. We're going to read in Romans that no one can take you away from him. You can leave, though. So then you want to say, oh, see, now I'm worried again. No, leaving is not the same as making a mistake and then he pulls away. He says, all right, that was too many. That was the last straw. I'm pulling my spirit away from you. Do you not accept the reality, the truth of the book saying that he's called you because he knows you can make it? He called you knowing that he will complete what he started in you. Then stop worrying so much. Okay, this is that Christianity influence thing. Oh no, you did the cardinal sin. You're doomed now. You're going right to hell. Stop it, okay? Just don't do that anymore. Stop worrying about, is there that one thing you can do? Yes, the one thing you can do is quit. How's that? There's your answer. Don't quit, you'll be fine. Keep at it, keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. Don't quit. That's what Paul teaches. Run the race. Go back to it. You know what? Janet, go back and listen to Endure and Receive the Crown of Life. I'm sure I covered this in there a lot. Okay? Just keep at it. Endure, keep at it, keep going, keep moving forward. I don't care if it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Keep moving forward. Okay? Now, when you're taking 1 step forward and 5 steps back, maybe there's a bigger problem, and we need to get counsel and address it. But keep moving forward. When you're not making any steps forward, now we have a problem. But not because he took anything away from you, because you quit. Next question.
Okay, from Leanne, says, is Rabbi telling us the scriptures instruct us to completely separate as a, so our quote, sect, as did the Essenes? How are we a light if no one sees us?
No, I didn't say that. I said, and hopefully by the time that question came out, maybe I'd already addressed it, but the point is, coming out from among means, where are you spending your time socially, relationally, not just living in a community? People see you when you're walking in the store. They see you when you're driving your car. They see how you respond when somebody cuts you off in traffic. They see how you respond to things in restaurants. They see how you respond to things, whatever you're doing. People watch you in your walk. But that doesn't mean that you are going to spend your free time and your relational time with people that could influence you the other way. Don't tell me there aren't people in your life that you don't hang out with anymore because you recognize that they were toxic to you. Yes or no? It could have been drugs, other lifestyles. It could have been anything. Whatever it was, you said, being with them is toxic to me. Now take it over to this. Those that are actively against or walking against Torah have a certain level of toxicness to you if you spend a lot of time with them. Why would you not choose to be with those that are walking with you than those who are not walking with you? Okay? It amazes me. It doesn't happen much anymore with this group. But it used to amaze me a lot that we had people in our congregation, probably goes back to the earlier versions of our congregations 15 more years ago, 20 years ago, where people, services would be over at 1 and people would be like off to go somewhere. Where are you going? Where is it that you'd rather be than with these people? You complain all the time about not having people to walk with, and now we're all here. Where are you going? That's why Tuesday night we were here till 1:30, because people said, I'm going to get every minute of this I can. Or you could go choose to hang out with your buddies and your friends that are doing other things. So, Leanne, I'm not talking about isolationism. I'm not talking about setting up some cultish separate community. I'm talking about minimizing the socialization influences of those that you know have a different walk than you do. Okay? It's just that kind of thing. All right? Because you all know that you have friends that you spend a lot of time with. And you have other friends that you almost never see. Different level of friendships. I had a birthday recently. Some of you online are, birthdays are evil. There's not a single verse that says that, so knock that off. Okay? Now, on the other hand, I had some friends, I don't even know if that's the right word, but people that I know going back to when I was in junior high school, like middle school, who I probably have not seen but maybe once since then, who sent me a little happy thing, or actually won't apologize because it was a day late. And I'm thinking, there's still a friendship there on some level, even though I never talked to this person and they never talked to me. But it also means I have no influence over them and they have no influence over me, but we still are aware of each other We're not isolating, all right? And I'm not saying that to be the whole thing about birthdays. It's just it was the vehicle that kind of had somebody connect back with me. And it would probably be kind of fun to see them again and just get caught up a little bit. But it wouldn't be a person that I would start spending a lot of time with all the time on a regular basis because they're not walking where I'm walking. Two cannot walk together unless they have an agreement on how they're doing that. And so there's a difference, okay? I've got a lot of people that I've had very close relationships over the years who I still have fond memories with, and if I ever ran into them, we would have a great afternoon getting all caught up. A great afternoon. And then that would be all for another 5 years or whatever. It would not be, hey, let's hang out every day, or let's talk to each other on the phone every day and start having that whole influence thing. The people I spend all my time talking to are in this room. Okay? And on the line, actually, a lot of you guys call or contact from on live stream. That's who I spend all my time with. Not just because I'm counseling. My social time I spend with the same people. Why? Because they're walking in the same direction. At least they're trying to. Why would I go want to hang out with other people? Why would you prefer to hang out with anybody except the people that are covenanted? Again, that's not isolationist. It's a matter of the percentage of your time. Okay? I'm not shunning anybody. I'm not avoiding anybody. I'm just not choosing to spend the majority of my time with those that are not walking in the same direction. And so, yes, we're still able to shine that light, you know. And guess what? When I catch up with some of these people, what are they going to ask me? Hey, what you been doing for the last 30 years? I haven't seen you in a little while. Guess what I get to tell them? I get to tell them about all this, about all of you. And watch their jaw drop. What? Because I'm not the same person they remember. And just like you wouldn't be if you met somebody from 30 years ago or something, right? You've changed a lot too. What? You uprooted yourself and moved to Tennessee for a religious thing? What's wrong with you? Believe me, I got friends that say, okay, let me get this right. So you are religious now, like you observe the Bible stuff, and you teach, and people listen to you. To you, they listen to you like they follow you. Because remember, these are people that knew me in college and teenager. And they just started laughing. Like really? And you can make a living doing this. And it just doesn't make any sense to them because they knew me as whatever I was at 18 or 20. And I wasn't doing any of this. At that point, I had no Messiah, no Torah. I was back to Ephesians chapter 2. I was without any of that stuff except by birthright, I guess, because I was a Jew. I was keeping nothing, walking nothing. That's what they remember. Super hyperactive, climbing on walls and walking on tables. And now you're in front of a microphone and people listen to you teach Bible. Not because they think that would be such a joke. They can't imagine it. They can't picture it. Just like some of you had some pretty rough lifestyles in your life. They can't picture that you stop doing all that stuff and you sit here and you move your life to a place so you can do that with other people. Because we change, we grow up, we do different things. So guess what? I can't imagine if you're over 40 years old, even over 30 years old, that there are not people in your life that you have chosen to not walk with anymore for various reasons. And I'm not talking about the Torah stuff, just before you even had all this. Then you just realize they were just not the people you wanted to spend any more time with. Okay? You make those decisions through your life on a regular enough basis. Now make it because of this. Just recognize that some people are not good for this walk in your life. So don't spend a whole lot of time with them. Okay? I love my family just like you love yours. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. So guess what? I spend time with them every year in small doses. I don't spend lots of time from weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We don't talk to each other all the time. You know, the extended family. I'm not talking about my immediate family, okay? But my parents, my in-laws, my brothers, my brothers and sisters-in-law, whatever. I love when we get to see them for a few minutes. For a few minutes. You know. Okay, that's it. Let's go. Look at What was that? There's less and less to talk about. That's true. I mean, don't think about it. What do you love to talk about more than anything else? Torah, Yeshua, Yahweh. How does that work at Thanksgiving when you go with the rest of your family? Or other family get-togethers that you might have, like a little reunion or something. Anybody in that room really want to talk about this stuff? Nope. As a matter of fact, they'll glare at you like, if you're going to do that next time, stay home. So for them, it's stay away from me, you people. As opposed to come out of for my people, you can just take that somewhere else. Okay? Next question.
Okay, from Pete Lamb. Could the meaning of the word vain in 2 Corinthians 6, verse 1 also mean to twist the teachings to one's own purpose? Wouldn't that be consistent with what's in verse 12?
Yes, to a certain degree that would. Like I said, whatever you're doing with it, you're making it of no value as originally intended. So that way of putting it certainly works. Okay?
Okay, from Linda Storm. Says, isn't putting faith in a human teacher as the one leaning on the arm of flesh can become idol worship? I listen to you and respect you, but I listen to others as well.
Excuse me. On the one hand, absolutely. If you are not looking at things correctly, you could start to worship or idolize the teacher. Teacher's just supposed to be your teacher. I mean, they could do that too. You know, there was a whole argument between, Paul and Apollos and other things. People, I'm of him and I'm of them, and they're starting to now look to the man in a whole different level. Okay, so we can be careful with that. However, I respect the fact that you say you have lots of teachers, but you're at some point going to find out that you're going to have a certain amount of confusion or lack of clarity when you have a bunch of teachers who don't agree on a bunch of stuff. And at some point, you're going to need one teacher to settle the argument, so to speak, to clarify the things that the multiplicity of teachers don't agree on. How many of you have had that experience? Okay, lots of you. Okay, so no problem, especially in the beginning. You're going around and you're looking for the teacher you're supposed to have, and you don't even realize you need a teacher. You just think you need teachings. So you're going and finding different teachers on different subjects and whatever it is, and you have lots of teachers. But what do you do when you realize and you recognize that they don't agree on a bunch of stuff? Well, I just picked the one that, oh, wait a minute, now we're back to verse 12. My own affections. I picked the one I like. I like this one when he teaches about this, and I like that one when he teaches about that, and I like this one for that. Then where do you get your counsel from? Where does this fit into Ephesians 4 and the fivefold ministry and the need for the teacher, prophet, etc., that it talks about the shepherd? Okay? Where does that all fit in? I mean, it also talks about apostles and evangelists, but you don't need those as much in the daily sort of thing. But you're definitely going to run into a need for a shepherd, teacher, and prophet. So how does that fit in? So I'm not here to say that, I'm the one teacher, everybody on the planet should have some nonsense like that. But I'm saying is you need to find yourself the teacher you're supposed to have so that you can have somebody to call and ask questions and have clarity. Because in the multiplicity and abundance of teachers, you're going to have a lack of clarity. There will always be a certain level of confusion. You might not see that yet, but you will. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, after having a lot of teachers? Because you're not going to have a bunch of teachers that agree on all the things. They're all going to disagree on a bunch of stuff. And so that's going to be, it's going to be challenging. All right, next question.
Okay, from Sam Davison.
Actually, hold on. I have one more point with that. The question had to do with leaning on the man or leaning on a teacher. Go back to Ephesians and recognize that he says you need these people for the perfecting until we come into. So, don't be thinking that, again, leaning on your own understanding or just the Ruach teaches. Be careful with that thought. No, you don't lean on, meaning I'm not going to do the work on my own also, but you need that person that you can find, that you can respect, has the authority and position that you need to be submitted under so that he can continue to perfect that work in you. Does that make any sense? Do people understand how to follow that? Because the I don't want to be falling into this leaning on somebody thing. Well, you take that too far, and you're going to be leaning on your own understanding. And that's a verse about that is in there too. Don't be leaning on your own understanding, because then you end up in all kinds of trouble. Go ahead. Was it Sam Davidson next?
Sam Davidson, yeah. Rick would like to know if the lesson today has to do with the strange woman in Proverbs 7. I'm thinking that's Proverbs 5 is right.
Probably. Because Proverbs 7, he's already getting into the little bullet point sort of wisdom things. Well, I mean, it could be. I mean, the influence of what you're seeing here in the first couple of chapters of Proverbs can be modeled into what's going on here. Remember, Paul's taking all the distilled wisdom and understanding that he has of the Tanakh, of the Old Testament, and answering an issue and addressing an issue in the Corinthian congregation. All right? So I'm sure a lot of that is a part of this as well. Next question.
Okay, from Nikolai, it was my understanding of the word that we should do as much as we can in-house, shop, work for, associate, as much as we can in-house. Would this be a fair assessment?
Okay, if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, if possible, you should be looking for people within the assembly to do the work if you have work. I mean, look, if you need plumbing done and there's a plumber in the congregation, probably should give that person a chance first before you use somebody outside. You know, if there's whatever it is you need. I mean, I'm just using plumbing as a simple answer, but, you know, you should be looking for those things so that we are, you know, supporting each other and helping each other out and getting help from. Okay, the problem is we don't know the wheat and the tares, and you know, and plus, what if the person blows it? What if the person messes it up? Are we going to react properly to that? Are we going to allow for the fact that people can mess some things up? I mean, just because they're in the body doesn't mean that they're perfect at anything. And so, what if you ask them to do a job and it goes bad? Now we got rifts and splits and anger and hurt feelings, and so it's a trap. It's got its pluses and minuses. So we got to be careful with that, all right? But yes, we should be looking to try to work together when we can. I mean, if I have a business does A, B, or C, and you need A, B, or C, and we're in the same congregation, why wouldn't you want to give your business to the congregation member before somebody outside? You know, why wouldn't you want to do that? It's just like in a country. Wouldn't you want to buy American if you live in America, or Canadian if you live in Canada, or wherever you live? Why wouldn't you buy your own country's products before you buy something from outside? Help support the people that live where you are. I'm just, it makes the same kind of sense. Okay? Next question.
Okay, from Jasmine R. Question, what about the Great Commission?
Wow, I've never heard that question before. Matthew 28, look, the simplicity of that is, again, you're still coming back to that. Didn't you hear me pick on you guys for that Christianese stuff? Okay, the problem is the Great Commission was a great commission to those who had been trained to do what they're doing. Okay, it wasn't a great commission. By the way, nowhere in the verse does it call it the Great Commission. The church called it that. At the end of Matthew, Messiah took the 12 that he trained and told them, now go do what I trained you to do. Okay? And then when you train others, have them go do likewise. It doesn't say anybody that now becomes aware of my existence has to go do this in an untrained manner, having no idea what they're doing. He didn't send out all the hundreds and the thousands that heard him speak on different places, on different hillsides and etc. He said, I've trained you to do this. So now go. It's time to go do it. This is what I trained you for. Okay? So it's churchianity that has taught you that you are all obligated to go out and do this thing called the Great Commission. Okay? Well, if you're doing it for Mother Church. You're not doing it for the Bible and for Yahweh and Messiah Yeshua, because the scripture makes it really clear. You ready for this? None, 0 can come unless the Father draws. Okay? And none, it says, none can understand the Father unless the Son reveals. So you got it going in both directions. Go listen to the Father and the Son teaching. It doesn't say none can come unless somebody goes out there and knocks on your door and beats you in the head and wakes you up. Okay, that's the Christianity version of it. Go back to CC101, the journey, where it says the journey starts with him poking your peace, giving you a little poke and waking you up and going, hey, guess what? Something's not right or something's missing. And then you start asking, seeking, knocking, and then you find, hopefully, somebody who has some answers. Okay? And guess what? You better hope, or at least have enough discernment as to whether or not the person that's giving you the answers is actually trained and qualified, because there's a lot of people out there offering a lot of answers who are not trained or qualified. And so you may think you found some answers when you've only found a little bit of something that's mixed in with a lot of something else that you maybe don't want. And you get that mixed mess type of thing. Okay? Next question.
Okay, Chris Zimmerman, this is from Anna in California. She is wondering, can people who are Torah observant be unequally yoked? Or does the truth yoke us even where there is a huge differences in how we walk this out?
I'm just trying to think if I understand Anna's question. Okay. Hey, Anna. Anna's from Alberta, but she's in California at a project. But look, you can be unequally yoked under any possible condition where you're not both walking under the same instruction. Okay? So if you're here and you've got another Torah observant friend, quote unquote, I've had people go to me, well, but these people are Torah observant. What does that mean, actually? Because I know a lot of people that think they're Torah observant, and it doesn't mean what I think it is. So I'm just saying, and you know people that claim they're Torah observant, and then when you ask them what that looks like to them, it doesn't matter what you think it is. So let's be careful what we say, because a lot of people out there that are teaching very Christianized stuff think Torah observance means they're not doing Christmas, they're not doing Easter, they're on Saturday, they're doing the feast days, and they stopped eating pork, now they're Torah observant. There's all the other doctrinal stuff is still Pentecostal, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, whatever, okay? The positional stuff is still that. Oh, but they're Torah observant. Torah pursuant, maybe. They're doing some things, but it's a lot more than just those little mechanical things. Now, I'm not saying those little mechanical things aren't big. They're big. They're the first steps. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Okay, for a lot of you, Sabbath was your first step. Okay, so that's the first step. Or stopping doing Christmas was the first step. Okay, it's the first step. But just remember, you're going to meet a lot of people that are giving you the Messacostal, the Messabaptist, the Messalutheran. They're giving you their Messianic belief, the belief of Messiah, with some Torah, but through the lens of the denominational place they came from. So their understanding of praying for people, healings, end times, deliverance, and whatever is all coming out of that place where they were. Okay? Their understanding of grace, their understanding of fear, their understanding of covenant, their understanding of salvation, their understanding of works, that's all coming out of that denominational place. Their understanding of holy. Okay? I mentioned that one already. Okay? He said grace. I'll have some grace for you for that one. Okay, so that's really what we're talking about. That's where the problem really comes into this. So Anna, I mean, you are at a place where there are people that are Torah pursuant that don't see things the way your teacher, me, sees things, okay, because you've been with me now for a few years. And so you could potentially be unequally yoked. That doesn't necessarily make them an unbeliever. It just means that you guys are not in the same place in your walk and you have different teachers. Remember, it's a discipleship phrase. Okay, you can't be discipled by two teachers. It just can't be done. Well, okay, you can if you're talking about two completely different disciplines. I can disciple you in this Torah, Observant walk, and maybe someone else disciples you on how to be a plumber. Totally different disciplines, okay? But if you're going to be a plumber, I keep using that as a simple example, what if you had two different teachers who see things very differently on how to do it? And that's certainly possible. Okay, go be, Nate's nodding, said, as a nurse, how many nurses do you actually see everything the same with than other nurses? Depends on what school they went to, who their influences were, who their mentors were, right? Okay? And you'll end up seeing things, well, you're another one who's a nurse, and you can see things completely differently, right? As some other, because it depends on who was the influencer, who was the discipling. And next thing you know, you're both going to treat a patient, and you're going, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this. Well, that's not the way to do it. No, that's not the way you were taught to do it. This is the way I was taught to do it. Which one of you is right? I don't know, maybe both are right. Maybe, in other words, both could work. And so we got to be careful with all that. So, yes, I think you can be, and this goes back to having multiplicity of teachers. If you've got one teacher, the person who's got a different teacher, you could potentially be unequally yoked. That's the problem actually what Paul's talking about, the unequally yoked. You've got a bunch of people in Corinth that are trying to worship the Creator through the context of Messiah and Torah, but they're doing it differently based on the influencers that have snuck in that are not Paul. So rather than just be discipled by him, now they're having other people have that level of influence. So now as you see the connection exactly to what we read today, that's exactly what's going on here in the Corinthian congregation. Next question. And we got to start to wrap up here.
Yeah, that's all that's really relating.
All right, good. Because I wanted to make sure we went long enough so the Rebbetzin didn't think we shortchanged her being in here today. So we did good? Is that long enough? Okay. So you'll certainly hear it from the other teachers saying, why did he go so long? Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close up. Looks like the Katan A class just came in. Oh, they were ready, paying attention. Excellent. Katan B. Come to Cleveland.